I'm Erica Nardini. We are here for a build session. We have two very, very special guests. These two are the founders and creators of the Skimm. So I'd like you to be introduced to Carly Zakin and Danielle Weisberg. Carly and Danielle hail from NBC. They both had very aspiring careers as part of a major media network. What they decided to do was to break out on their own and to create a new kind of news source that was made for millennials. How many people here read the Skimm? The thing I love about the Skimm is that you just feel more chic after you read it. Not only do you feel more intelligent, I actually feel like I'm more stylish and better looking. So we owe that all to these two. So they're going to give us a little bit of insight into their world, what makes them tick, what gets them inspired, why they chose email, how they're so creative every morning. We also then really encourage questions. So any questions you may have, just yell. I'll remind you that we'd like you to tweet. So tweet pictures, comments, ideas at AOL Build. And then the other piece is Tall would like everyone to know that he's buying beer on the 6th floor at 4:30. So if anyone would like a cocktail, we will have one for you now that you'll be more chic and well informed. So with that, I'll hand it to you guys.
Thank you.
It's real time. It's full service operation.
Am I done? Yes. Okay. Hi, guys. Thank you all for coming. And we didn't know about the beer, so we might be with you for a little bit longer. I'm Danielle Weisberg.
I'm Carly Zakin.
And we started the Skimm, which is a...
Well, first, before you start, who did not raise their hand when we asked if you signed up? Can you please take out your phones and can you go to theskimm.com and enter your email, just like this lovely lady is right here. Please do that. Thank you.
And feel free to share it on Facebook while you're at it. So we started the Skimm, which is a daily email newsletter that breaks down the headlines. It's the best way to start your morning. We give you everything you need to know that's going on in the world in under 5 minutes. Great way to wake up. We are longtime friends. To give you a little bit of background about who we are, where we came from, and how we started. I grew up in Chicago and went to high school with Jordan. And just grew up a really big kind of nerd in the sense that I loved reading. I was always a kid. I was always a kid with my head in the book, like at the dinner table, always reading, just loved it. And grew up in a place where Chicago is a pretty politically active place, and I felt like it was always a topic of dinner table conversation. I was brought up with my family to always kind of have an opinion on what was going on in the city with local politics, and it was just something that was definitely a part of me growing up. And then I got to college and realized that I really loved journalism and wanted to make it my full-time career. We actually met studying abroad in Rome. So we went to separate schools. I went to Tufts.
I went to UPenn.
And we met on a study abroad trip, and then we reconnected when we were working full-time at NBC News. We had a lot of fun abroad, but didn't talk about how we both kind of grew up, these news junkies. And then I started interning at NBC, and between the two of us, we've worked in every division that NBC News has, pretty much between New Jersey, New York, and DC. So I started off in the Washington, DC bureau, and I was producing for Nightly News and the Today Show, and off-air reporting on the Capitol and at the White House, and then I was at MSNBC producing for Lawrence O'Donnell, and loved it.
Yeah, so I grew up actually here, so not as exciting, but I also was a big news geek, and really one of my first memories is just wanting to watch the rest of the Today Show and not wanting to go to school, and all I wanted to do was be Katie Couric. And that was all I talked about. It was like very clear. I like literally would write like a journal of like at, age 17 I'll intern here, and age 22 I will be on air, and like I just thought that was my plan. Obviously like nothing works out exactly like that, but we, like Danielle, I started interning really really young, basically as soon as it was legal. I found someone who worked at Nightly News, basically stalked them, and they got me an internship in specials and breaking news, and I never left the building. And so that, Danielle, I went to school in Philadelphia. Danielle and I met in Italy, as she said, and after college, I worked in CNBC in primetime development. Then I worked in MSNBC in documentaries. I went to DC to do more documentaries and took a brief break from news and tried my hand producing reality television. That was not for me. I spent some time with a polygamist family in Wisconsin, which I do not recommend. And then I begged NBC to take me back. And I came back to New York and was doing documentaries for the network when we left. So we had worked between the two of us in doing everything from breaking news, 30 seconds segments to 2-hour documentaries. And as friends that reconnected in the building after college, we would do, as I'm sure you guys all do at 4:30 when you grab cocktails, we would grab a drink and talk about, our career paths. And we both loved where we were. Our coworkers were family. Our first internship bosses are still like our mentors, and we were very settled there. But we graduated school in 2008. My first day at CNBC was the day Lehman went under. So it was a very interesting time, as I'm sure many of you know, to be in media. And it was scary to watch how divisions were collapsing or closing or consolidating. And I think we both always had the attitude of, you want to be your boss. And if your boss isn't so happy or stable in their career, that's a little alarming. So as friends, we would talk about, what happens to us in 5 years, 10 years from now. And we actually became roommates in New York. And it's funny, last week we cleared out our bookshelf, and it was very indicative of where we were in our lives a few years ago, because our bookshelf had GRE book, GMAT book, LSAT book, and The Secret. And I think we were getting to the point that we each at different moments were feeling lost. And both, we loved news, but we were like, is this going to be financially the best career path? Is this going to be a stable career path? Where are we going to be in 10 years? And we each would look at other industries, thought about grad school. I once took a job at a PR firm for 23 hours and then came back. So we each sort of had these like mini quarter life crises, and then usually at the other half of our drinks and brunch session, we would talk about our friends.
Who are really smart. They went to great schools, and they have great jobs, but they're all really busy. And so they would come to us as their two friends who were being paid pretty much to know what was going on in the world, and ask what we thought were pretty basic questions about what was going on in the world, like, why do I really need to know about what's going on in the Ukraine? Or, what's going on in Syria, or what's the VA scandal? And they would look at the headlines if they had a few minutes, but it didn't really give them enough to tell the whole story. And we realized that they didn't have a news source that they really felt comfortable with, that they felt comfortable asking these questions, and one that they liked coming back to, and one that fit in with their routines most of all. We, at the same time, started thinking about this and learned a word that I'm sure you guys know, which is female millennial. We hadn't really thought about that as a term. So we started Googling, like, who are our friends, what do they represent, and we learned all about, the influence and the purchasing power of this demographic. And we took a step back and we looked at the fact that everyone in advertising and media is going after this demographic, except for news. And it really didn't make any sense to us. We don't believe that news is gender specific. The Skimm is actually 70% female, 30% male. And we didn't, believe that there needed to be a female-focused news source, but we definitely thought that there was room in the market for a marketing plan focused around our friends. So we looked at what we do first thing in the morning, which is roll over, check our phones, and we look at email, and we read emails from our friends first. And across the board, that's what everyone we know does. So it kind of just came to us that if we wanted to reach this audience and we wanted to get them really interested and get them excited about reading the news every day, we needed to talk to them just how we were talking to our friends, and we needed to do it when they wake up and make it really a habit. So that's really how the Skimm started. But before we did that,
well, the one thing about with email is that it was also the only thing we knew how to do. We obviously did not have a tech background, and we definitely didn't have a traditional business background. And I think the savviest we both were is to send an email. So we're like, we can do that. And so, you know,
and at the time we thought that we were just going to add everyone to
we thought it was going to be a Google list, like a BCC list. That was wrong. I will say, like, the one thing about us, you know, I hope, you know, 2 years ago I would have said, you know, I'm not a businesswoman. I hope now I can say I am, because I think we are. But we, I think, are both very good at knowing when we need help and what we don't know. So we knew exactly what we wanted our product to be. We both, the voice was in our head. It's not my voice, it's not Danielle's voice. When we both sat down to write it, we each wrote a Skimm of our own and compared. They were identical, and we were like, okay, we never had to articulate it for each other. There was this unspoken understanding, and we knew who we were going after, and we each had friends that we were visualizing when we thought about who's going to read this every day, but we had no idea how to start something. So we went to a Skillshare class. Danielle got off of your show one night early. I had something canceled, and we took a random class, and it was about how to find a business partner, which unfortunately was the only thing we actually did at that point. We knew that part. And so that was sort of the beginning of us trying to talk to people. And we really spent a few weeks just talking to anyone that would speak with us, anyone that had built something, whether it was an accountant, a lawyer, a fashion designer, a media exec, really just anyone that would give us the time of day. And our questions couldn't have been more basic. It was like, how do you start? Do you incorporate? Are you an LLC? Like, what are you, how do you do this? We got a lot of negative feedback, and especially from tech people who told us this would be the stupidest thing we could ever do. We would mortify ourselves. Email is dead. We were told time and time again, email's dead, but we would be told that over email. So
yeah, and we were told also, you know, why are you going after a bigger market? And we were like, well, we're going after women. I think that's a pretty big market. Like, there's, you know, and it was really just kind of astonishing to us, all the feedback. Yeah.
Was it from men?
It was mixed, actually. Yeah, no, it wasn't just from men. And so we definitely heard it all in terms of why we shouldn't start this. But at the end of the day, we kind of just looked at each other and were like, would you read this? Would our friends read it? Yeah. So let's try it. And we were 25 and 26 at the time. Roommates. It was never going to get easier if we were ever going to quit our jobs and take a risk. So we quit. It was the single scariest day of my entire life. I sobbed the whole way through it. My boss had to ask me like 3 times, like, I think you're quitting, but I can't understand you. And July 18, 2012, we launched the Skimm. We sent out an email from our apartment, and it took off overnight. We just, you know, we're very, very lucky and thankful that a community really sprung up around the product from the beginning. And we kind of talked about, okay, how do you form a community, but we didn't really know anything about it. And it kind of just happened organically. So we have been, it's been astonishing coming from media to see organically the press that we've gotten and the following. So we haven't paid for any marketing, advertising, or PR. We actually just started our first Facebook ads in the past month, and we are the fastest growing email newsletter on the market, and our open rates really blow everyone else out of the water. Sorry. And we are very excited about this year.
Yeah, so we, as Danielle said, it took off overnight. We got to the point, you know, we were doing everything, the two of us, and it was honestly a blur, and it started to become too big. We got to the point where we needed to raise money, which was a whole hurdle in itself, and probably, after you quitting, the second hardest thing we've ever done, and probably actually what we're most proud of, because we really knew nothing about that. And again, we did was we tried to talk to anyone who knew anything about raising money. We faced a lot of hurdles doing that. The most common things we were asked was, who is our technical co-founder? Who did we pay to make our business plan? People didn't believe that we could write.
Or who writes your sports coverage?
Yes, people did not believe that we could write our own sports coverage or financial news. And basically, people also thought that our parents should fund us, which we can tell you they are very emotionally supportive, but when we quit, they said, best of luck. So it was a very hard thing to go through, and something that we developed a very thick skin doing it. Finally, we had a great syndicate in the end of the day, which we couldn't be more proud of. And then we closed our round end of last year, and we started hiring, which was a very big deal for us because it had just been the two of us. So we got our first office and got out of the living room couch that is Skimm headquarters, that was Skimm headquarters, and now have an office and are now, as of Monday, a team of 8. And 2 people are here right now. Hi. So for us, it's really the most surreal thing for us to talk about when we say we have a team. I keep referring to them as my teammates because I don't know, it's a very surreal thing for us to be here, talking about this, because I still feel like we're on our couch sometimes, and to see people taking a leap of faith with us because they believe in what we're doing so much. And so, as Danielle said, we have become the fastest growing newsletter on the market. And when we look at what we've created, I would say we've created 2 things. One is a voice. We chose to introduce the voice through email, but the other thing we created was community. And what I think has distinguished us the most is the passion and fandom behind what we call the Skimm life. And we look at our social channels that have really nothing to do with news and are about the Skimm life and about people showing us where they skim and skimming in Skimm t-shirts, and what does that mean? And it's this really unprecedented connection to a brand that's about giving them information and giving them news. And for us, that's what we're most proud of. And every day we get thousands of notes from readers who have become our friends and who submit their birthdays and who we really know, and we respond to every single email we get, and it takes a very long time, and who just want to share and say thank you. And so for us, that is what has been really the driving force of the momentum behind us. And so right now we are about user growth and really see this as just the beginning.
Yeah, and I would say, a lot of times people ask us about our day-to-day right now. It's a total mix of jumping in where it's needed, of doing everything you would think, and trying to get a startup off the ground. We're co-founders, co-CEOs, and we're really focused on business development efforts right now, and really focused on user acquisition. So that really takes up most of our day-to-day. And then the fact that we are still very involved day-to-day basis with the newsletter, and keeping up with that crazy schedule as well. So if anyone has any questions,
we can open it up.
So I think you guys are great. I read the Skimm every morning.
Thank you very much.
So I guess what I was wondering, where do you see the Skimm in a year? I think it's awesome now, but what's your big, dream? It's
really a funny question because we're not even 2 years old. So to think about, where we're going to be a year from now is both a terrifying and really exciting question. To remember that a year ago we were actually talking about how we were working on our stoop this time and trying to get Wi-Fi at places. So, for us, we are really just doubling down on user acquisition. So we have a very big subscriber goal, and that's where we're all hands on deck focused, as well as, maintaining the community and just getting more people engaged both with the newsletter itself and with the brand and what it stands for, being engaged on the ground.
And I'll also say, we see our product is really the voice, and so we hope to expand upon that. That voice can live in other platforms as well. Anyone else?
Yeah. Do you guys still write? Well, 2 questions. Do you guys still write it every day? And are you 2 people that press that in the morning? Do you wake up at 5?
Yes and yes.
So, yeah, we do have people on our editorial team right now, 2 people that just joined us a few months ago, which was a very exciting and hard transition to give up a little bit of control on that side. But yeah, we are definitely involved day to day we read over every word that goes in it multiple times. And I can tell you I was up at 5:30 this morning and I was up at 6 o'clock making sure that it went out okay.
Do you have plans to go for the full week instead of just like the work week?
One of our readers actually said it best to us, that they loved us so much because they can get behind a business that respects brunch. And we respect brunch. I think for us, you know, why we started with email and why we send it out when we send it out and why we write the way we write is to tap into the routines of our user. And we've actually early on experimented with doing weekend stuff. And our open rate, which was so high, wasn't as high on the weekends, because I think what we found is that people say they want it on the weekends, but the reality is you're busy on the weekend, and what our product mantra is, we're not trying to be first. So when there's news over the weekend, like, we would tell you where else to look for it, but we want to be right, and so it doesn't necessarily fit into our plans right now. That doesn't mean that it wouldn't change in the future. It's
also nice to be missed. I really like looking at Twitter on the weekends and hearing that people are sad they didn't get the Skimm that morning.
I have a question. I'm over here. I read it every morning also. I read it on the train. I was wondering how you guys monetize your product and like how you plan to grow it, I guess.
So we actually are intentionally pre-revenue right now, but funny enough, we have brought in revenue, so it's an interesting place to be in. Revenue is not our goal right now. Our goal is user acquisition, and that's our metric of success. So we more often than not turn away money a lot. For us, in terms of where we see this going and where are we a year from now or 2 to 5 years from now, I would say, all I can say is that we have a lot more up our sleeves that have revenue models attached to it, but we have started introducing sponsors to the newsletter. So the MBA was our first sponsor. So Chris Paul guest skimmed, and you'll hopefully be seeing more things like that.
Also, just on that question, I think one of the lessons that we learned as a startup, if we ever wanted to be successful, we were going to have to be laser focused. So it was kind of a path of revenue or users, and we chose users.
Over here. I noticed, I guess, today you added like the new word, or added a new section, but that has to have some restrictions, right? Because the more content you put in, the less it goes to the Skimm idea of it being brief.
Yeah,
how do you handle that?
So today we launched this section, or I guess yesterday, Thing to Know, and it was kind of our version of Fact of the Day. And so today's was YoPro, which actually stands for Young Professionals.
Which actually, Kaylin over there, our team, her sister, little sister, introduced us to. We didn't know what it was. So.
We don't agree with using that as an acronym, but it does exist. And so for us, it felt very on brand in the sense that it's information you need in our voice, short, on the go. There were a few reasons behind it. There was stuff that would come up a lot in the office where, you know, we would have questions or our team would have questions, and we were like, our readers have questions, or our readers write in all the time and ask, I'd love for you to explain what this means. Sometimes we use jargon, like we said BRB before in the newsletter. We got a lot of emails, people saying, what does that stand for? And like, people talk to us like they're our friends, and it's a safe spot to ask questions that, maybe you don't want to ask to everyone else. And so we want to respect that and, be a part of that. I think the other thing is we got a lot of emails of people saying, news is so depressing, can I have good news of the day? And like, the reality is, yes, news is not always happy, and we're not trying to sugarcoat anything. We try to give you information you need in a way that you'll enjoy getting it, and this is sort of our way of ending it on a light note.
Hey, I got a question over here.
You'll come back.
Me or? Okay. How did you get users for your first mailing list? Did you have a public beta list?
No, that is a great question. We, between the two of us, came up with a list of, I think, like 5,600 people. 5,200. And we got it from having no shame and reaching out to everyone that we knew. People we went to kindergarten with, ex-boyfriends, ex-bosses, ex-boyfriends' moms. I think we put together a list, and then I think there were like 4 people. We
unchecked their names. Yeah. But we had literally anyone we had ever come into contact with, any like listserv I had ever been on, like I just...
chain chainmail.
Oh, chainmail is the greatest thing to have happened.
My aunt sends me a lot of like, I don't know, random prayers, chainmail, like if you break this, something bad will happen to you.
We copied and pasted those names and we put
and we would say like, hey, we're doing this cool thing, it's called the Skimm, you want to sign up?
We don't sign anyone up without them opting into it, but for that first blast, we just introduced ourselves and what we were doing, and we pitched the first 2 articles about us. It was Forbes and Business Insider, and that came out the day we launched, and that and our funding press was the only press we've ever pitched, and then just it all spiraled organically. So within 2 weeks, we were mentioned on the Today Show, and we had been called by Vanity Fair and a lot of other press outlets, and honestly, like Danielle said, we came from media. Like, we used to be on the other side of receiving pitches. We have no idea how this happened. And people ask us all the time, like, I'm starting something. How did you get pressed? I have no idea. We were very lucky. And I think people just really resonated with the product.
Where do you get your news?
A lot of different places. We actually don't share our specific lists on a day-to-day basis. Yeah, with each other. But I think my favorite sites out there, a lot of sites that I love, my Gallon's Playbook each morning is how I start my day after the Skimm. And The Atlantic, The Hill, I love NY Mag.
Yeah, I think we intentionally don't share our list to keep it fresh. I try to read a lot of like the industry blogs, like TV News or Above the Law, like things like that. Like, what are people talking about in various offices? I love Time Magazine. I also Politico Playbook. We do have a similar list, I suppose. But we really try to read everything, not to sound like any politicians, but we do. And also look at Facebook and Twitter. What are our friends talking about? We discover a lot of things that way.
Do you guys have plans to address racial issues?
I think it goes back to our model that we really don't have to be first. When we started out, we knew that we couldn't be everything to everyone. And we didn't really want to be. I think to have the infrastructure to be able to do breaking news in a way that's responsible and in a way that people really trust takes a lot of infrastructure. And we didn't really think that we could handle that starting out, nor did we want to take that on. The one time when we did think about jumping in with breaking news was the tragedy at Sandy Hook and the Newtown shooting, and we went to write a breaking news version, and when we went to fact check it, we couldn't fact check anything. Everything we had was conflicting, or a lot of times it turned out to be wrong, and that's because all of these outlets out there are trying to get it first, and that's their job. And I understand, we've both been in the control room in that environment, so we think of it as a luxury that we don't have to be.
Hi, I'm Rachel. Thank you for coming to AOL.
Oh, thank you.
I was just curious about your user acquisition. What source drives most of your acquisition?
Word of mouth. We have grown entirely by word of mouth, and we define that in different ways. So you telling your roommate, who tells her cousin, who tells her mom, is word of mouth. Our press has been word of mouth, and we really mean that. I mean, in August, and when we launched, we got an email from a reader, like we do every day, and she said, I work in publishing, and my office talks a lot about drones, and I don't understand them. So we became pen pals, and we would send her articles, and she would ask questions, and we would respond, and she was our little online friend. And then, sounds weird, but a few weeks later, she wrote us an email and said, by the way, I work at Vanity Fair, can you guys come in? And we came in, and they're like, we'd like to throw you a launch party. What? And Danielle cried. But for us, so that has been press. That has been word of mouth. Lena Dunham randomly tweeted about us one day. We don't know Lena Dunham. We had no idea that was happening. That was word of mouth. So for us, there's obviously different strengths behind it, but we have grown because of the community and asking people to share. I think that was when we first launched, we talked to people for advice, like, how do you grow? And they're like, well, when all these people write in, do you ask them to share? And we were like, no. And they're like, well, maybe just ask. So now when people write in whatever they say, we're like, we'd love for you to share us with 5 friends. And sometimes all you have to do is ask. And they're like, okay, sure. And so that's just really helped us grow. And we actually now, we've started a Skimbassador program, which is ambassadors, our version of them, that are people all of our ages, that are passionate about the product and have full-time jobs and are influencers and around the country, who just want to share it and who want to be a part of this exciting time for us. And that we're in Facebook groups with them and we're talking to them, and Kaylin over here talks to them every day, and that's her job. And it's about mobilizing this community, and they are taking word of mouth to a different level, I would say.
It's amazing what you guys are doing.
Thank you very much.
Oh, yay.
Thank you.
And this is such a random question.
Go for it.
I'm looking at the logo, and I'm looking at you two, and I know it must have been a really hard decision, but how'd you come to that? I feel like that logo looks a different.
It was actually my birthday present from Danielle.
Yeah, it was a surprise. I knew nothing about design or graphic design or digital. I had a friend who designed a T-shirt for my friend's bachelorette, and she made a Harry Potter figure. It was a Harry Potter World Bachelorette, and I was like, wow, it's a great Harry Potter. We're launching this company. Can you make up a logo for us? And that was her first try.
She asked. I think when I've talked to her since, what did we want to get out of it? And she hit it nail on the head. And I think for us, we get questions about it all the time. People love it or they hate it. For us, it's very, we hope, clearly tongue-in-cheek in a lot of ways, and we think very on brand for us. And we look at her as our blank slate, and it's really fun for us to be talking to brands now because we can change what she's wearing, where she's going, what she's holding. So when the NBA sponsored us, she was wearing a jersey and sneakers and was dribbling a ball. And so it's fun for us to dress her up.
I think we have time for 1 or 2 more questions, unless Jordan wants to talk about it.
No, thank you.
So Editorial Integrity, you're going to get into the sponsor game, like you said. Where's the line for you guys? What would you do? What would you not do?
Very big line. We get brands ask us all the time, we're launching a new cracker line. Can you write about it? Or we'd love for you to talk about our new makeup. No, we are a journalistic product. We were trained by, we believe, the best in the industry, and first and foremost, this is a news product. So it's very important to us, and we have a lot of inventory with which to work with brands that we feel is creative and actually enhances the product rather than taking anything away from it. And we actually were talking to a mentor of ours a few weeks ago, and he's like, you have to start from day one. Does your brand have integrity or does it not? And our brand does, and that's very important to us. Anyone else?
Do you guys update the newsletter per time zone, and do you send it out at the same time?
It goes out at 6 a.m. Eastern across the board. We're not that fancy. Yeah.
Last question, or?
Okay. Oh. What inspires your subject lines?
Really random things.
We think, what would we open?
Yeah.
It's kind of what would put a smile on our face. What would we read? It would be like, oh my gosh, you're talking to me. We used to do a lot that were stop drooling, or keep one eye open, things like that. But it's when you're reading it and you're half asleep, I think we're inspired by a lot of our readers write in and tell us how they read the Skimm, and how people have called it you're the transition between me being unconscious and conscious, and between me and my coffee, and between me and talking to people, and we're part of me time in the morning, that you really have very limited me time. So we try to enhance that and kind of have fun with it.
It's usually something that comes up while we're in the writing process that makes us laugh, or
We're always looking for ideas if you ever want to email them to us.
All right, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For everyone at AOL, join the Skimm, follow the Skimm. Thank you guys so much. You've been adorable. We may not let you leave.
Thank you for having us.
And thank you guys for coming to Build.